All right, welcome back to Old World Legends. We're going to pick back up right where we were with Cathay on our part 2. So, Evan, where did we leave off?
So where we left off, and we talked about some of these special rules as we were talking through the characters. However, and I think we kind of normally do this, where as we're talking about units, we'll bring up the special rules of those units. Cathay might
Mhm.
be a bit of an exception because they have some pretty unique special rules, and they can be very wide-reaching. In fact, the most wide-reaching one is the Elemental Winds special rule. During each start of turn subphase, the Cathay player rolls a d6 to determine which elemental wind blows the strongest. If the wind of Yang
Okay,
blows the strongest, on a 1 or 2 or 3, you get the range of your dispel and enchantments increases by 3 inches, and then all
nice.
of the will of the dragon units, which basically means every like Cathayan, warrior, so the
Mm,
Shugengen and the Jade Warriors, those kind of dudes, they all get
okay.
one of the following modifiers: +1 movement or +1 initiative.
In terms of you pick, how does it work?
You get to pick between one of those two things, and the whole army gets one of those two things. I feel like you very
Cool.
often will go for movement for the charge range, something like that. If you're already kind of locked in combat, maybe +1 initiative will be useful. But I feel like the main
Yeah.
part is the dispel range and enchantments are huge.
Yeah, depending on, and so that's something where you have to, go back and look at, oh, what are the potential ranges for these things? But
Yeah,
again, it's 50-50 chance, so you don't know what's going to happen, which is exciting. But I love it. It's like the Chaos God table, except it's a very different version of it, right? And it's something you're doing every turn, and that's really cool and really thematic.
and remember in part one we pointed out that the Lore of Yang had two enchantment spells in it. So if you roll the
Mhm.
Wind of Yang and you have the Lore of Yang, your enchantment spells have longer ranges.
Nice. Love
Right.
it. Okay. But the's one more, right? What if you
Yeah.
roll a 4
So
plus?
on a 4, 5, or 6, you get the Winds of Yin, and until the next start of turn subphase, you increase the range of hexes and magic missiles by 3 inches. In addition,
Mm.
you basically your whole army pretty much gets either +1 weapon skill or +1 leadership.
Hmm. The weapon skill is really nice. The leadership can be important depending on if there are times where just everything you're going to be playing like a leadership bomb army or leadership debuff army. That's definitely going to come into play. But man, +3 inches on some of the hex spells, right? You're going to start getting to, because that's one of the biggest challenges with hex spells is typically you have to get really close. They're typically really short range. So
Yeah.
suddenly you're going to get some pretty decent range on that. But again, you can't control it. So it might be the turn you really want to hex them and you just don't get those wins, right?
What it does though is it kind of says to the other person, "Hey, if you want to not get the random movement D6 spell cast on you, you have to start 18 inches away from me. Because what if I roll Winds of Yin and now my range is 18
Mhm.
instead of 15, right?"
But that's assuming you took that caster. That's assuming you took that signature set, and that's right. So,
Yeah,
and you roll
sure.
like there's multiple layers that have to happen, right? So again, like, are you really going to take two level fours with the different signatures if you're not taking the dragon, right? And you can, again, assuming you're playing in a comped in a event where you're allowed to take two level fours, right? Because I think we're going to see a lot less of that going forward with the match play rules and more comp rules going forward. So yes, it's possible you could always benefit from one or the other, but I think it's far more likely you're going to see you only benefit from those range half the time because
That's
you're only
true.
going to have one of the signature lores.
Yeah, and I actually literally just noticed that it only applies to wizards with that Lore of Yin special rule. So if you took Lore of Yang and then got Master Barrage, that character won't get +3 to his range for his hex.
Exactly right. It's like I was saying in the last video, I think this has been the designers have done an excellent job. I think where you saw some of the play with the
Yeah.
not having the great weapons and some of the points cost of the magic items. And again, they this is very well crafted. Things that they've missed in other versions where there were more loopholes or things they had to FAQ. I think they've done a few iteration passes on this, and I think they've done an excellent job.
So then we have Celestial Forged Armor. So this, as we alluded to in part one a lot, a character with this gets the ward save against anyone suffered, and they can wear it even if they're a wizard. And so it's basically just chaos armor, but
Mhm.
obviously
Yep.
kind of non-chaosy, right?
Yep. Okay. So the opposite is so we have chaos armor on one end of the spectrum, and now we have celestial armor on the other end of the spectrum. So we got to
Yeah,
get that, angel devil theme going on, which is really cool. We've never had that before. That's a
yeah.
new thing.
I feel like these guys, if anything, are very much the anti-Warriors of Chaos. They are in a
Hmm.
lot of ways similar, but in a lot of ways very, very different, and we'll get to that with the
They
units.
are, yeah, because it's not about the raw stats and power, and it doesn't feel like a good guy bad guy straight thing or the polar opposites. There's overlap, but they very different in terms of the way these armies are going to play.
So then we have Master of Elemental Winds. So this I alluded to before. When the wizards with your in this special rule, basically within 6 inches of one or more friendly wizards, once per turn they get to have the +1 to their casting roll. So again, it is 6 inches, not command range, but it's not that hard to be probably close. In fact, I imagine a lot of people will run the two Shugengens like right next to each other as like a little tag team duo that can either dance around, shoot magic missiles, or charge in together.
They
So
they they
that's fun.
can, but suddenly if you're trying to keep the two of them within 6 inches together, you're really restricting your board presence and your
Yeah,
table threat, right?
yeah.
And so that seems pretty bad. Like, if it was just anywhere on the table, I'd be like, oh. But the fact that it's 6 inches apart, that's actually putting a meaningful restriction on your movement, and it's really telegraphing to your opponent where you're going to be. That seems like a really good balance. And if you're playing the dragon, well, the dragon wants to go into melee and go off on their own. They're not going to be within 6 inches. So I'd love that it's restricted by 6 inches. It's a very tight radius. And so it's really telegraphing to your opponent. If you want that buff, you're going to be telling your opponent where you're going to be.
All right, and then finally we have Will of the Dragons, which is one of the special rules that is kind of keyed off of with like Miao Ying and some of the other special rules. This is just kind of blanket on every single like Jade Warrior type, a Cathayan
Hmm.
soldier. And
Okay.
what it does is it gives that unit reroll failed panic test when they either get fled, like when a unit gets destroyed within 6 inches, or if they get fled through by a friendly unit. So very
Oh,
similar to
okay.
Valor of the Ages from High Elves, except that Valor of the Ages is if they take damage from shooting or get fled through instead of a unit
Hmm.
getting destroyed nearby. So
Yeah, that's
similar.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it doesn't come into play that often, and most people forget that that rule even exists. In terms of they just don't remember. Oh, someone to oh, I need to panic. It's one that is constantly overlooked, but again, also totally wiped out. Within just doesn't happen as much because typically they get really wounded and flee. So I love the rule. I think it's very cool. I think it's very thematic. It's not going to come into play as often as one might think.
Yeah, and remember, this is the kind of the keyword that the elemental winds keys off of. So these are the units that then get the buff from elemental winds.
Yeah, I love these special rules. I think they're really interesting. I think they're really thematic. I love that they're also contextual. They feel honestly really balanced in terms of this could be really beneficial, but you clearly can't use it all over the place. Um, um, I'm excited. I think they're great. I think Cathay Army people playing this army are going to be excited by those rules.
Yeah. So let's go through the army list. So again, we talked for about an hour on all the different characters and combos you can do there, and there's a ton of juice there. What's in the
Hmm.
rest of the army? Well,
Hmm.
so for core, you have 25% that's spent on Jade Warriors, and you can just have as many of these dudes as you want. That's cool.
Because they're cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and then we have 0 to 1 unit of Jade Lancers per 1,000 points. So you can take, two units of Lancers in a 2,000 point army. That's pretty cool.
Cool.
Because of their weapon, which is very unique, that they can attack in extra ranks when they charge. Um, I know people might be wondering, like, oh, what about the throwing spear that lets you attack in extra ranks when you charge? Yeah, no one ever uses that. Like, it's kind of a
No.
bummer because it's a cool idea, but it just doesn't ever comes up. Um,
Yeah, it just doesn't.
no,
But it's interesting that they restrict to one per thousand
yeah.
points. So again, you still can create an old cavalry army, perhaps, if you want to. I
Well, and
don't know how much cavalry they have, but
well, it's just this. That's it. But Mike, because
okay.
they attack in extra ranks, taking you to like 8 to 12 of these dudes where they actually like rank up is great because they
Hmm.
can all still
I
swing
love
when
it.
they charge.
I love it. Now, yeah, now you're going to start seeing some really interesting unit compositions and different formations. And hey, maybe if I want to be four way, maybe I want to be too deep or three. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what players do with this.
Okay, so then in special we have if you want more Jade Lancers, you can have them there. 0 to 3 War
Okay.
Machines per 1,000 points from either the Fire, Rain, Rocket Batteries, or Grand Cannon. Um, that's a lot.
3 per 1,000 points sounds very generous. You could have, you want to create a gun line? It sounds like you can.
Especially when they get to shoot twice. But we'll get to that in a
Yeah,
bit.
well, yeah, we're
Um,
not there yet.
so we have some interesting options here. If your general's a Shugengen Lord or a Shugengen, you could have a Cathayan Sentinel in special. So not if
Cool.
you have Miao
I
Ying,
like that.
right?
Okay.
Because surely you'll have one of those two, I imagine. If your general's a Lord's Magistrate, which remember, those are the guys who, they're not melee guys, they just have like human stat line with leadership 9, but they can ride a
Hmm.
balloon. But if he's riding a balloon, basically like if your general's on a balloon, you can also have a Sky Lantern as a special choice.
Nice. Okay. I like that. Cool.
So that opens up the idea of, okay, all my character slot is loaded up with Sky Lantern dudes, and I have 2 Sky Lanterns in rare and then a Sky Lantern in special, and I just have a massive Lantern army.
Yeah, if you just want to light up the battlefield, this is the way to go.
They do a little bit more than just giving off heat. Okay, we'll talk about that in a bit. And then 25% of your army can be spent on any number of Sky Lanterns and Sentinels. Don't really need to limit Sentinels because you can only really fit 2 in a 2,000 point army anyway. So if you had a 1,000 point army, you can only really fit 1 Sentinel anyway. But we'll get to them. And then it has mercenaries. So they don't have any unique mercenaries yet. I imagine we're going to see. In fact, in the article that came out today, they said that the Army of Infamy is going to have Empire mercenaries in it.
Nice. I want to see that. That sounds great.
That's interesting. And then we have allies, and they have essentially just every single Forces of Fantasy army can be some kind of ally with them. But they have the closest alliance with Dwarves, Empire, and High Elves, obviously, because they're not suspicious. Okay, and then for the Battle Standard Bearer, you can have a Gatekeeper. So, interesting here, there's no Shugengen guy who's a BSB. That would be wild, but no. So it's just your kind of melee foot slugging guy who's the BSB. However, he's very cheap. It's kind of like getting an Empire Captain BSB, right? Yeah, so that's your army list. So again, you don't have a lot of things in here, but I think every single unit is going to have a really strong place in at least some builds. So let's talk about them individually.
Well, we don't have a lot of things yet. Again,
Yeah.
I strongly believe this is wave 1, and I wouldn't put it past them having a wave 2 even in this first edition of the game.
Okay, so let's talk about Jade Warriors. So a Jade Warrior is essentially a veteran state trooper. We've got weapon skill 4, strength 3, toughness 3. So for a while I was thinking these guys are going to be like Chaos Warriors. They're going to have like strength 4, toughness 4. Why not? They're just they go to the gym.
Speculating that they're just humans. They're just humans.
Well, see this when we get to the core stat line is where maybe some of the oh my god Cathay is so overpowered vibe can start to be relaxed, because I think that the special rules and the items are basically almost all the power they have, because the regular guys are humans, right?
Yep,
now,
just humans.
Yeah, and Bretonia has showed us that regular humans with a bunch of special rules can be really, really cool and very, very strong. So let's see if they have the same kind of vibe, right? Well, first off, they're heavy infantry, so really hard to flank and remove their rank bonuses.
Yeah, okay, like that. They do come with heavy armor. That's nice.
So these guys are like dwarf warriors.
Yeah, except they don't have T4.
Yeah, but otherwise, they're kind of like a dwarf warrior guy, and that's a good place to start. You either get a halberd or a shield for free. So again, if I have a veteran state trooper and I buy one of these 2 things, he's 8 points.
Yep.
So let's see how else we compare to a veteran state trooper, because it's going to get better. So we've got 3. We have the officer, the standard bearer, the musician. The officer can take 25 points of magic items. We have 0 to 1 unit per 1,000 points can have drilled or stubborn.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. So you can make an anvil unit, or you can make a drilled unit that again is going to try and move faster up the table. I love that.
Yeah.
It's nice to see that it's restricted per 1,000 points, so you can't just give it to all your units. So that seems good.
That's true. However, I do think you could probably just have a pretty decently big sized unit with, and maybe you haven't seen it yet, detachments of other Jade Warriors.
Okay. But why? Explain to us, Evan, why do I care?
Why might you do that? Well, this is a pretty defensive unit. We got defensive stance here. Unless it charged during the movement phase, or counts as having charged, you get to reroll armor saves of 1.
Okay. So not as good as Grommel armor, but still good.
Yeah, so you have a pretty decent little brick there. If you have heavy armor and shield, you got a 4+ armor save. If you take Miao Ying and make these guys Celestial Dragon Guard, their weapon skill 5 with a 6 of ward save and a 4 armor save. So that's a pretty decent little block. We also have detachment and regimental unit, right? Detachments could then maybe take halberds and do like a flank charge, right? And guess what? If you buy stubborn on the parent unit of like, let's say 20 warriors, the detachments just get to have stubborn for free.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I definitely see some fun combos here of their damage output's not going to be the best, but if you want to make an anvil unit, that's just going to be, a big anvil unit with armor and reroll those armor saves and stubborn, that can absolutely absorb, a charge or 2, right? And that's where you get some fun play with those detachments and such. So I think it's great. I think this is what we were wanting to see out of Empire, and hopefully in some future updates, we will see more of these kind of combos come over to Empire in the future. But I think this is very
Yeah,
exciting.
because Empire has leadership 7 on these dudes, and then no heavy armor for like the same price, and no defensive
Yeah,
stance. So it's kind of just
yeah.
very bare bones. And again, that's why
But
I know
I'm
how
gonna
good these
view it
guys
that
can
way.
be.
I think this is just the design team is learning how to craft more effective infantry in old world as the game is formed and such. Right, this book is
Yeah,
released much later than the Empire book, or at least when it went into production. And I think they've learned a lot of lessons. And I don't view this as oh, it's sad. Look at Empire. I view this as oh, this is where they're going. This is what they're realizing what infantry should be bringing to the table. And I think we're going to see Empire and other armies infantry start to get more of these updates to reflect similar patterns like this. That is my expectation.
potentially very, very soon, if the FAQ update rumors are true, I have heard some rumors that perhaps we will see a very large number of points changes coming. So we'll have to
Yep,
see that if that happens.
we'll
And
see.
hey, maybe
Knock
if
on wood.
Cathay, if everything in Cathay looks really, really cheap, maybe it's because other armies are about to get some price cuts. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I don't know that it's really cheap. It might be, again, this is more of an intended balance of the
Yeah.
points, and we're going to see that reflected in the other armies, hopefully in the near future.
If you have any mission where you have to have some number of dudes to just guard your baggage train, sit on an objective marker,
Mhm,
these guys seem pretty
mhm.
awesome. And you could even just take units of
Yeah.
5 dudes who just hang out and say, like, yeah, I mean, you want to come kill me, you could, but I'm also just like a 40-point unit of like 5 guys, and I'm just gonna sit here and
Mhm.
charge you, or
I'm really excited by the big brick of stubborn and or a drill big brick
yeah.
and seeing what you can do with that. I think that you're going to have a lot of board control potential with those units, and that's very exciting.
Remember, if you stick your gatekeeper in there, he gives you a whole bunch of rerolls on a bunch of different types of leadership tests too.
Yeah, so they're going to be again hard to dislodge.
Yeah, and even without any other kind of character buffing you, you have half the time this unit gets the +1 leadership. So half the time you could potentially be like leadership 9, and then or potentially half the time you're movement 5, or half the time you are weapon skill 5, right? Another +1
Hmm.
there.
Hmm.
So pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, so, yeah. It's cool.
Okay, so we have Jade Lancer. So
Okay.
interestingly, they have a whole bunch of special rules for cavalry, but what they don't have is first charge, which is interesting. It's potentially a less powerful special rule than the designers originally thought, I believe. However, as we pointed out in part 1, you can just stick the gatekeeper on a Cathayan warhorse and join the unit, and then just because that one guy has counter first charge, the whole unit counts as doing it, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But what they are is they have, web skill 4, strength 3, toughness 3, human, with still with leadership 8.
Yep.
So similar to like an
Yep.
Empire Knight, they've got,
Yep.
Cathayan Lances, heavy armor and shield. So Cathayan Lance is not the same as a regular lance. In fact, probably should have covered that earlier, but it only gives you strength +1. However, it does
Mm.
let you fight in 2 ranks when you're charging. So that means you can have, a unit of cavalry, maybe let's just say 4 wide and 2 ranks deep, and all, get 8 attacks when you're charging. That's pretty great.
You could do some other spicy things too. You could have a six-man unit, right? And you could
Yeah.
be three wide and two deep, right? And you get all six to hit, and suddenly that unit is really maneuverable. Imagine a whole bunch of like bullets of six, three into three wide, two deep that are just spread throughout. Like it allows a lot of potential for some threat potential, and to get those flanks or to get combo charges a lot easier. You're going to get more attacks in. That's really really
I
exciting.
think that's
How players are going to play that
I
out.
think a 3x2 unit is basically very, very similar to like a 6-man Knights of the Realm unit in Lance formation, where like they kind of basically that unit gets the 5 attacks +1 for the champion.
Hmm.
That this unit's going to get the 6 attacks +1. So
Hmm.
pretty similar. Again, you don't have strength 5 on the charge, so there's a lot of buffs you can do to solve all those problems for you, but they aren't as and in some ways it's kind of cool because they don't outshine the infantry as much. If the Lancers had strength 5 on their charges and the infantry only had strength 4 with halberds, it would definitely feel like one was outshining the other, but it's an interesting
Hmm.
balance here.
Yep. Yep. It's exciting.
A huge thing too is that this Lancer officer can take a 50 points of items,
Mm.
which means you can take the unit of 6 Jade Lancers and give the officer that Plague of Rust item, and now you have a 6-man unit
Yeah.
that's just a casting bunker too.
50 points are huge. So all of a sudden you're going to start like, oh, wow, I could put quite an interesting combo on this. So maybe I want a bigger brick of this unit so that the champion's going to survive quite a bit longer. And then you could put some of those really exciting items on them that you don't necessarily want to put on a character. I love the fact that that's available up to 50 points. I think you're going to be able to do a lot of interesting things that you're typically restricted to with only often a 25-point limit. So that's
Yeah.
exciting.
So a couple interesting things here. So we've got 0 to 1 per thousand can have ambushers for only, it only costs 1 point. And then drill for 1 point and stubborn for 2 points.
Love
So
it.
drilled and
Love it.
stubborn, that's the special rules that Empire Knights can buy for that point, that price point. And they just, here, Cathay, you have it too, bud. I'm not salty.
Yep. There's a lot of similarities. Yep. Mm-hmm.
These guys are just better Empire Knights. Okay, but ambush is the really crazy one because I imagine at least a decent number of people are going to say, okay, so I can take a unit of 10. They can all fight in 2 ranks. I can just ambush, and then they're not on the table for you to shoot at, so they'll just show up at some point and move pretty fast and run something down. While in the meantime, you can't, like, they're not there for you to shoot at or to charge, so what are you going to do?
Yeah, assuming they show up when you want them to, or when it's not too late in the game. So
Oh
you're
boy,
still
Mike,
taking that risk.
you're going to have another one of those, is this supposed to stack or not tournament organizer questions coming up real soon on that side.
Oh my goodness. Why do you do this to me, Evan?
No, it's not me, it's
All right.
Cathay. Cathay's doing it to you.
Oh, well, damn it, Cathay. All right, what else do they have? Swiss Stride, yeah, Will the Giant, yeah, great unit.
And
Good
very
thing they have
important counter charge.
charge.
You
Very
know,
important.
you
agree.
play Wars
Very
Chaos, you
important.
know how bad it is when your knights don't have counter charge on them.
You need counter charge. Very important.
If you don't have counter charge, you're basically not a knight. You're just a guy.
It's one of the coolest rules they added to this edition of the game. I love it. It's really cool.
Yeah, and it really
It
sucks
makes
to
them
not
feel
have it.
so different. It really makes them feel so different than infantry. Besides movement, like this makes them feel mechanically like something different, and I love it.
And you know what? They double down on the whole fight next ranks things. These guys have horde, which means you can have basically 3 ranks of knights and then get the +2 for the 2 ranks of, for combat res purposes. And remember, you have drill.
So if you want to make a big brick, it's totally a viable strategy.
I think I really like the idea of you take 12 with drilled, and then so when you're charging somebody, if you want attacks, you go 6 wide and get 2 ranks fighting. If you just want some combat res, you go 4 wide, and now you have to use your horde to get the extra combat res points just from the extra ranks.
Yep, interesting choices. I love it.
Then we have Cathayan Cataprax, which is another amazing rule to help make up for the fact that they're not using real lances, which is whenever they make a follow-up move, which means like the enemy gives ground, they still count as charging. So if you charge into the Graveguard and they back up 2 inches and you follow up, you're still charging the next turn with initiative and with your lances or whatever.
Okay, that's really cool, and I like that. It's different again, but it doesn't feel broken because you're still only strength 4, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you're a Chaos Knight that's base 4 and then lances 6. So it is allows you to be strength 4 all the time, though. But you also benefit from the AP of the weapon too. So really cool. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think that, remember, that's just the core block of dudes. That's your core unit. The officer can buy some interesting items to help buff you up. He can buy that item to give you terror for 25 points. So you can have little units of, every single unit of Cathayan Knights can just be a terror causer.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you could make some interesting combos here. That's exciting.
And you stick your little gatekeeper dudes in there, right? Just be even fightier. Oh boy. So when I first heard all the Cathay rules, I was very much like, oh my god, this is unbelievably broken. I've very much come down to say, okay, no, there's a lot of really interesting stuff here, and I think it's really well balanced. Until now, and now I absolutely am going to argue that this thing costs half as many points as it should. Mike, we will have to read. There's 2 pages of this. Okay, it keeps going. Okay.
Well,
this is a steam tank.
Let's dive into it.
So a Sky Lantern.
Okay. Well, that's not toughness 7.
Yeah, it's not toughness 7, but it does have 7 wounds, and it's toughness 5.
Okay, so it is tough. Okay.
Yeah, it's only 135. Now, remember, before we tell you anything else, this is 135 points. That's very often what I spend on 5 Dark Riders.
Yeah, and that's about the appropriate points cost. Again, it is, that's the range of, do I want to take that medium-sized monster or not for that price point range? So, and often it's no, but if you're like a giant chaos spawn, it's going to be in that range of yes. So let's see what it does.
So we have 4 crewmen who have Bliss Skill 4. That's the important part. And then a commander who has Bliss Skill 5. We have 5 dudes with pretty good Bliss Skill on top, right? Okay. We're a heavy chariot with 4+ armor save. So again, we're like, this thing is, other than not being toughness 7, this thing's like an Iron Demon already for half the cost.
Iron Demon only has a 4+.
Maybe it'd be toughness 7 with 3+, but again, 7 wounds and it's half the price of an Iron Demon. So I'm gonna come back to that. Okay. The crewmen have to buy either the crane guns, the Iron Hail guns and then also buy gunpowder bombs. So that's two things together. Or the Iron Hail guns and Dragonfire bombs, and that costs 20 points to do that. We have to see all of those different weapons because it's a totally different build depending on which thing you want to buy, right?
Okay, but it's a difference of 15 points versus 20
Yeah.
points.
And then Sky
Okay,
Lantern bombs
so
is 15 more if you want to take that. Okay.
oh, that's an addition. Okay, so potentially 20 more points if you wanted. The other weapon is free. So, okay, okay,
So we have a ton of rules. We have
okay.
close order, so we do get at
Mhm,
least until there's an FAQ. We still get +1 combat res there.
okay.
Disengage, which we'll get to. It's a special run. Eye of the Dragon special. We have Feigned Flight. That's one of my favorite
Okay.
rules in the game. It's incredibly good because every single time anyone charges you, I flee. You don't
What's
catch
its
me.
move? Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter
Yeah,
what its
so
movement is. It's just 2d. I just move
that's
2d6
true.
away when you
Fan
charge me.
flight doesn't matter. Yeah, that's true until you're at the edge of the table, in which case then you're set.
Oh, unless if you use Fire and Flea Might, because then you only have to go back d6 inches, so it's safer.
It is safer. It is not guaranteed. In D6, again, there are many very fast things in this game,
Yeah.
so it's going to be very, very effective. Turn 1 and 2, and going into 3. But you're going into turn 4+. You are not going to have nowhere left to flee.
Well, unless if Mike you had fly 8, so you could just if you're chasing after me with a bunch of dragon ogres or something, I'll just fly over you.
Yeah, does this thing skirmish?
It doesn't skirmish, but it doesn't really need to.
Okay. I, I, it is a huge difference that it is 100 by 100 millimeter base and it doesn't skirmish.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
That makes a huge
You don't
difference
just
in its
measure side to side. You
maneuverability.
have to like move. So in other words, if you want to move to the
Correct.
side, you move 4 inches instead of 8, right?
And I'm that dragon that wants to chase you down, or something else that does fly that's on the other side, you're not going to be able to get out of its arc. Um,
We'll
yeah,
circle back to
interesting.
that. So we have fly 8, right? And
Okay.
we have reserve moves. We have the 3 best movement rules in the entire game on the same thing: feign flight, fire and flee, reserve move.
Okay. Well, reserve move. It's not really a caster, but could definitely help it with its shooting,
So
right?
I move forward, throw grenades, bomb you, whatever, shoot you, then back up again out of range, or the reverse. I just want to move further away, or I stay still, right? So I don't have to suffer movement penalties, shoot you, and then I just move after shooting. It's all kinds of stuff you do as a reserve move.
Which makes a big difference when your ballistic skill is only 4.
Yeah.
Because we know if you have ballistic skill 3 and then you have all the penalties, you're never going to hit anything. So I think with ballistic skill 4, and if it can shoot and then move with reserve after, that will significantly reduce the move and shoot penalty, and you already have ballistic skill 4. Again, you're not an elf, still, but you are going to hit things a lot better than typically a dwarf or an empire soldier with ballistic skill. So good. We wanted to hit things, otherwise you're not going to take it. So okay, let's keep going.
So we have scouts, so you can just drop this thing after everyone deploys wherever the heck you want it, right?
Well, that's just cool
Yeah.
because
It
he
also has
doesn't want
large.
to see a lantern just floating into the table. That just sounds cool.
It has large target, so it can see over your own troops or enemy troops to like help guide the rocket battery. So that's one of the things you can do. You can guide rocket batteries. We'll find out
Okay.
later.
But it means you can also be seen and shot
Yep,
as well.
yep. And then it has unbreakable. So if anyone tags you and they just do a couple wounds to you, you're just like, cool. I'm just gonna back up a couple inches and we'll just keep going from there. Which is so again, why I compare it to an Iron Demon is because it has unbreakable and 7 wounds and a pretty decently good toughness. I can't just fire arrows at this thing.
Yeah, unbreakable is an interesting choice.
S-
But I'm assuming its combat profile is not compelling. I'm assuming it does other interesting things to do damage.
Well, it does D3+1 impact hit, so I can't imagine this, Mike, but somehow you're able to crash these things into enemy units if you want to.
Well, that's just cool.
I think
That's
that's
cool.
ridiculous.
But what? I mean, but it's D3+1 impact hit. Strength 5 is good, so it automatically hits. But what's the AP of those melee hits? Probably AP
-2,
0.
you're a heavy chariot.
Oh, it is a heavy chariot. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, you want to see? Okay. All right. Let's keep going. Okay.
Okay. So let's
Okay.
look at all the
All right.
unique because again, we're already the best unit of fast cab in the entire game right now because we fly. We're toughness 5. We have more units than we have more wounds.
Well,
than a
we
unit of
haven't
5
seen
has.
any damage output yet, so we're not yet the best.
Right, but all of these movement and shenanigan rules are already better than 5 Lyran Reavers, 5 Blade
Correct. But
Riders.
it don't care what my movement and shenanigan rules are. If I have no damage output, then I'm just a distraction Carnifex, or
If this thing
which is
was
still
just an
valuable.
amazing distraction effects and did no damage, it would be super worth this number of points.
Yeah, again, but there's a huge difference if I want to take two
Yeah,
of them or three of them for utility board,
right.
shenanigans versus I want to maximum take as many as I can because there's literally no downside. And it has great damage output. So let's just keep going.
So Eye of the Dragon is friendly models that use the bombardment rule. So specifically, these are the rocket batteries. Can
Okay.
shoot as if they're using this model's line of sight instead of their own. If there's no range requirement on this, you can just do that.
Can shoot using this model's line of sight rather than their own. So this is effectively just to remove the penalty for firing indirect, effectively.
Yeah,
Right?
so basically the rocket battery can hide behind some kind of a hill, and they could just, as long
Yeah.
as this thing can see them, then the rocket batteries can just not have that like scatter thing, so they can shoot all their rockets at people. That's pretty great.
Well,
I don't think,
it still scatters. It just scatters less.
yeah, because indirect is where you always scatter even if you get the hit marker, and this would mean that you would still be able
Correct.
to like hit a target.
So that great. That's what I would want from something like this, but it's also not game breaking. It's just another. It just does another thing. All right, keep going.
Should this model ever lose a round of combat, it can disengage by making a leadership test. If you pass the test, you can fall back in good order rather than give ground, and the enemy units follow up in this as if this model had given ground. So the enemy unit only gets moved 2 inches, but you get to move.
Can follow up. It doesn't have to.
Right, but the whole point of this is that you can fall back in good order up to 6 inches away, where they are only allowed to follow 2, and then that's generally in the other person's turn, which then means now I can just walk away from you.
Assuming you roll enough to go that far.
You roll 2d6, pick the highest. So you just have to get a 3+ on both on least one of the two dice, right?
Odds are
Yeah,
good, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
going to work most of the time. I'm just trying to convey that this is not a guarantee,
Right.
and it's not a totally screwing over the opponent where they have to. They could also reform. They don't have to pursue. So there are. This is very, very, very good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't feel like, oh, I'm frenzied. I have to move forward. I'm out of position. Like it is very good, but it doesn't feel totally busted, and
Right.
it is not 100% reliable.
You can also do the same thing if you win combat. You can fall back instead of trying to follow up, so you can kind of help move away. So you can potentially crash this thing into an enemy unit, win combat against it, go. I'm just gonna back up a little bit later.
Assuming you
Kinda
pass
cool.
your leadership. What's this leadership? Is it 8?
So the one if you win, you know, there's no leadership test for that one. This one you just get to do.
Well, if you win, then what
Yeah.
the heck is the other person doing?
Well, I'm just saying if you use this thing's impact hits, which I find ridiculous, to charge into like 5 peasant archers and kill them, you can then just back up again to help get yourself back to a safe spot.
You know
Which is
what? If
crazy.
you're charging those 5 peasant archers with this 135-point sky lantern, go for it, man. If that's you think that's a good use of your turn, and to not shoot or do other things.
So let's keep going because we're not done yet. All right,
Okay, the rules keep going,
they do
but
keep
that
going.
makes it already pretty good. But let's keep going.
So we have Heavenly Beacon.
Okay, okay.
Unless it's
Cool name.
fleeing, units that are within 12 inches of it can reroll panic or rally test. So it's like a little bit of like a leadership bubble. So you don't even have to have the character who's like a strategist on top to be able to do this. It's just the bubble just happens.
But it's not a break test.
Yeah.
It's not a break test. Big difference there.
Yeah. Still pretty cool. Again, this
It's
is
still great. I'm
so
just saying it's not. It
they
would
did
be
not
really powerful if it was break test.
they did not give Jade Warriors and Jade Lancers the veteran role, but they did give a lot of characters and other things in the game ways to give them rerolls to a couple of their leadership tests they might need, almost as if they were kind of like veterans. If that makes sense.
But again, it also makes a big difference. It's not veteran role is so much more powerful.
Yes.
The fact that it's all leadership tests. This is not. This is very specific because again, this isn't going to help you versus screams or big terror checklist and all those things.
Yeah,
It's
there's no
not helping
terror.
you
Yeah.
versus fear or terror. Like this is very so. It is good, but veteran is so much more powerful. So
Okay.
just pointing that out.
But I think the second part is the crazier part. In addition, while the
Oh,
model's
okay.
on the
All right.
battlefield, unless it's fleeing, which by
Okay.
the way, it can't flee.
It can't flee. It could from
Terror.
spells could make it flee potentially or terror. So
That's
it can
it.
flee. Yes.
Yeah. The only way it can be fleeing is if it fails a terror check, pretty much. Anyway,
Well, it's unbreakable. It could. What if a friendly unit died next to it, or like it could?
that would because it's a single model, it'll just fall back in good order. It's never under half strength. It's kind of
So
silly.
right, terror,
Yeah.
unless there's a spell or magic item terror. Okay.
Right.
So it can.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, while it's on the battlefield, you can add a +1 or -1 to the result when rolling to determine if a friendly unit with ambushers comes onto the table. There is no cap that this is 0 to 1 for if any of these. So you can have multiple of the balloon on the table and get multiple plus or minuses of 1.
Unless this model is fleeing friendly to the 12 area. Okay. In addition, while this model, not a model, this model is on the battlefield, see, that's the problem. It doesn't say this, or when a scan lantern is on the table. It
Well,
says
yeah,
this
if it
model.
said it while at least one sky
Mm.
lantern, it wouldn't stack. But because it says while this model, there's multiple models that have this, you get multiple plus ones, unless if they FAQ it to basically change their minds. Because I think you very often want to buy 2 lanterns, and then you want to have your little units of ambushing lancers who.
They need to FAQ it again. I would want to say it was not intended to stack, but I'm not convinced. I think we need GW to provide an FAQ on that. At the same time, who's ambushing? The unit of lancers?
Yeah,
Is that really game breaking?
yes. The reason why it's game
I don't
breaking,
know.
Mike, is my entire core section can be off the table while I only have lanterns that sit in front of you and shoot you.
Yeah, but there's other armies who can just not be on self, and what Beastman could ambush and like um
So they have the best ambush in the game.
assuming this
Yeah.
allows you to stack, which we do not know that that was the intent.
Right, and if it gets to sack, one of the best part about this is being able to not bring in a unit when you, like, let's say I roll a 5 on my roll to come in, I can then just give
Mhm,
myself -3 from 3 different lanterns, and now I don't show up when I don't want to, right? So it's like
mhm,
that's pretty cool. Um, we'll circle
mhm.
back on that because I think potentially having an army, and again, I don't think anyone will ever do this in person because it just seems like a waste of money. But if you brought 10 lanterns and that was your list, plus some lancers who are never on the table, could potentially be very strong. But I don't. Hopefully, no one will ever do this. But we'll come
I don't
back
think
to
it's
it.
going to be very strong to hold objectives, though.
Well, I think you might not need to.
All right,
Okay.
let's keep going.
And then it does say this is again. I don't necessarily love the idea that we have a single special rule that does 3 things. Maybe just have 3 rules. But the Lord Magistrate or Strategist who's on the Sky Lantern only has a range of 12, not 18 like a normal large target. So if he's your
That's fine.
general, you don't get a massive bubble. That'd be kind of crazy, right?
Okay, so that's a negative. Okay.
So for 15 points, you can buy those Lantern Bombs. And if you buy the bombs, you can do the bombing run attack against a unit that's not engaged combat. You don't have to move over the unit like gyrocopters do. You just have to move within 6 inches of it during its remaining move phase. So you just have to move kind of close by,
Okay.
and you can then bomb people, which is not the same as the gyros, which was harder for them to do.
Okay. Is it still a shooting attack though? So you can't do it while marching?
Well, Mike, no one will ever march the lantern ever in the entire universe.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, so you're moving 8 inches. My point is, it's not skirmishing. So if you're only moving 8 inches and you're getting close enough to bomb, you are close enough to be charged.
Yeah, and then I'm going to reserve move away. But yeah,
But
but you're right. You're not
which
skirmish.
sounds
You
great.
you
And
can't go 8 straight back after
right.
moving 8
And,
forward.
and
Sure.
and I hear you, but at the
Yeah.
same time, cool. Someone pushes his 6 Pegasus Knight unit up. Cool. Go ahead and bomb, kill 1 or 2, and you're not getting anywhere. I don't care your feigned flight. It's still gonna catch you with their swift stride and their crazy charge. So I'm
Yeah.
just saying there are counters to this. So I just want to I'm not saying it's not overpowered. I'm just saying this I do not
I
see this as an end all be all. There's nothing that
I
can
would
defeat it.
love, I would be super excited and thrilled and be loving this unit if it was literally twice as expensive. It's very weirdly cheap. It's like they
Yeah.
had a
All right.
typo.
That doesn't mean they're not going to change it in the future. But let's
They
keep
will,
going.
yeah.
All right. So what does the bombing run do?
So not that much. I mean, it's like if you roll a 1, you hurt yourself. If you roll a 2,
Bummer.
you just have a
No.
dud bomb that just does 1 wound to the enemy, which you can't really rely on that
Okay.
happening. And then 3 or 4,
No.
you get these 5-inch blast template that scatters and has strength 5 AP2, which is what the Hellstorm rocket battery should do, but it doesn't. That
Yeah.
can kill
So
a
it has
massive amount of skeletons.
it can potentially do a lot. It
Yeah,
also could potentially do very little. It's this
yeah,
is certainly versus infantry. If it doesn't scatter, if it hits, it could be very effective, very devastating. But it could also scatter 6 inches away, or again, you're going versus cavalry, and it's going to be hard to get anything but partials. So huge delta there in its potential output.
yeah. But I think it possibly would be worth it just to buy the bombs on maybe just one of your lanterns, because I mean, that's only 15 points, and again, I'm already
I
saying
mean,
how cheap the
yeah,
thing
for
is.
15, I agree. For
Yeah,
15 points, it feels like even the chance of it being half effective, certainly worth 15 points. Agree.
And if you have hordes of guys sitting on objectives who are like, Empire State Troops or Yeoman Guard or Goblins, like that's a crap load of damage, right? And then if you get roll of 5 or 6, you put 2 3-inch templates and they both scatter.
Okay.
Which is probably in some cases worse than a single large blast. But
Yeah,
I mean, it depends on whether they scatter.
Some
or not.
cases better. Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah. So pros and cons. So um, that has the potential to be very effective. It's super swingy, but for
Yeah.
15 points, if you're already buying a lantern, I'm probably going to spend 15 points to take it.
Yeah, remember you don't have like a unit of Jade crossmen or archers to try to fire arrows at these kind of units. Like this is what you need. Your lantern is your primary missile battery outside of magic missiles. So this is the thing that shoots stuff, I think.
Yep.
Okay, then you get to pick, remember, between either the Iron Hail guns and then they also get grenades. Or because the grenades they get the Iron Hail gun and like the Dragon Bombs, which is in like the special rules section, or you can have the Sky Lantern Crane gun. These are your two options. The Hail gun is a blunderbuss. It's range 12, strength 3, AP 1, multi-shots D3, but also you just ignore all of the penalties for like multi-shots, stand and shoot, firing long range. So you just
How many of these is it firing?
5 of them.
5 at ballistic skill 4.
4, and then one of them's at 5.
Okay. I mean, yeah, sure. Okay, cool.
It does have move and shoot, so again, which is the worst named rule in the game. So if you were going to do what you said, Mike, and march, then you could still shoot this.
Yep. But also it doesn't ignore the moving penalties, but you could stay still and then reserve move. But if you're reserve moving, you're only moving 8. And again, you're not skirmishing, so you're not going to do too many fancy things. So, okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, you definitely do some damage with this. But if you're within 12 inches, again, you are within charge range. So, yeah.
That's why I
Okay.
much prefer the crane gun. I know there's probably a lot of contention about this online right now, but sure, a couple blunderbuss guys is great, especially for this price. That's fine. What if I could have an entire unit of Jezzails on top of this thing? Because the crane gun is 36-inch range, strength 6, AP 2, armor bane 2, and Mike, you get 5 of these shots.
I get 5 of these shots.
So it's an entire unit of Jezzails on top of the large target toughness 5 thing with 7 wounds.
I forget what's cumbersome. I don't
Cumbersome means you can't stand and shoot, but who cares? You can.
Oh, who cares?
Yeah.
Armor bane 2, not a big deal. AP 2, strength 6. That's really good.
And with 36-inch range, you're often at close range anyway, so you don't necessarily have those -1s, right? And then, in particular,
and you are on a chariot, so you do have it's got a firing platform, right?
360. Yep.
So you are firing 360.
So you can Mike, you can put your lanterns right in front of the enemy's army.
Why would you not take crane guns? I mean, why would you take the Iron Hand?
I think because there's 2 ways to play the lantern. You either stick them in scout right in front of the enemy's army, and you know what? Have them face away from the enemy army. You don't need to charge or anything. What you want to do is start in front of them and then shoot backwards at the guys like who are onslaughting as you just slowly move away. If anyone charges you, you feign flight, fire and flee, you just kind of back up. If they're not charging you, you just slowly kind of hover away as you're shooting and gunning down, doing bombing runs, and you just kind of sit in front of the enemy army as it slowly walks towards you. Or you have the crane gun guys who sit a little bit further away and they're just kind of firing platforms with all of these really long range guns. You can have those ones facing kind of into the battlefield, so if anyone comes towards you, you can just march or fly away from them while shooting the other way.
Yeah,
you don't have to
but again,
face
it's also the point, right, with the scout thing. That's assuming the other player didn't bring any scouts of their own.
Yeah.
Right. And then again, we also have to take terrain into effect, right? Again, some of the problem is too many communities out there just don't have tables with robust terrain sets. Luckily, our community, we have some great terrain sets. So I definitely see both strategies. I think the crane gun feels like significantly more potential and stronger. But yeah, I can see both plays. Again, maybe you're just trying to do a suicide bomb where you're just putting the iron hail guns and the bombs and you are going to charge in and you're just trying to slow the enemy down, right? And it could be clearly very effective at that. Okay, cool.
So if this thing just sat there and didn't get to move, didn't get to charge, didn't get to do anything, and was just a firing platform for like 5 decent ballistic skill shots, it would be more effective than any bolt thrower I've ever seen for the price point.
Yes. Absolutely, it is significantly more effective than a bolt thrower. Um, you still suffer the long range penalty though, right? So still going to be -1.
So
So at a
the
minimum, assuming there's no cover. Yeah.
the elf bolt thrower has 2 wounds. It fires a single shot at Blitzskill 4.
Yep.
It's strength
Yep.
6, AP 2 with multi wounds 2, but it's one shot and it's 80 points. This thing has
Yeah. Well,
5 shots at
yeah.
decent Blitzskill and it's 135 points.
Yep. We all know the bolt throwers in all armies right now are not as effective as they used to be, which is why we pretty much never see them on the table. So
It's super well,
um,
and particularly the elf ones, because you get hit with anything multi wounds too. If a single Ushabti just looks at you wrong, the whole bolt thrower dies.
yeah, so I definitely agree with the criticism of it does so many things, and out of the gate without having to pay for the upgrades. It feels like I almost wish that they were a more baseline. And if you want to custom make
Yeah,
a Skyline to do this or that, you'd have to pay for those upgrade points. But I agree, it is for what its disruption potential. It feels too cost effective for its disruption potential.
why not take like 4 of these? If there's no rule of 3, if there's no limitations, some of them are characters. So
Well,
remember, Mike, if there's characters, we can take ward saves and we can have extra wounds. We can have a 10 wound Sky Lantern that's unbreakable with like a 5-up ward save for like 200 points.
uh, yes, and again, don't get me wrong; these things are good. I'm not trying to imply they're not, but a dragon is also going to eat these for lunch too. So um, there are many things in the old world that will wreck face against these things getting into combat, and there are
Yeah.
many things in the old world that it cannot outrun. So yes, inherently it's good, but let me counterpoint with dragon. Right? It's like, well, dragons will eat these for breakfast,
Yeah, and
and
they're
they will not
only
be able to get away from a dragon.
the big problem is that the dragon's amazing at fighting things that are point dense, and these are so light on points that they're um a lot of time a waste of time for the dragon to fight. And what if you charge in and you flub a little bit and you only do 5 wounds to the thing? Well, guess what? It'll use
Yeah.
disengage, fly away, and now that was a whole waste of time.
Potentially, I mean,
Yeah.
but you could flub. Dragons have flub verse guaranteed. Of course, I'm going to wipe this thing out, and then you just crap all once. I mean, that just
Yeah.
happens. Uh, so that's true in either case. So yes, I think the criticism of it is just 2 points efficient. I think is a very valid criticism. I do think most communities do use rules of 3, and at the same time, if you want to put if you want to take 3 characters on 200-point things, that you're going to spend 600 points on these, and now it's one less level 4 wizard or one less dragon on the battlefield. I don't know that I view that as a problem as your opponent. Like, cool.
The only problem, Mike, is if your entire army is just this. So you can have several magistrates in is
Mhm.
your character allotment, taking like
Yep.
4 of them
Yep.
as characters. Some of them have ruby rings, some of them have the item that gives you plague of rust, some of them have
Sure.
ward saves. Then you have like 3 or 4 in rare and special, right? And so
Hmm.
you can have 9 of them in your regular army. All of
Hmm.
your core is just lancers that are off the table in ambush. So they just they can just not show up on the table, and the enemy has only toughness 5, 7 wound things to try to fight. That's it. It's the only thing they can shoot at or charge.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, but at the same time, Tomb King can do a giant monster mash list right now with tons of just tough things too. So right, they could put 2 Necrosphinx and the
yeah,
Bone Dragons, and I'm just saying,
we
like,
would
there
we would
are.
not be
This
having
is
the
not.
conversation if it wasn't for the crane gun. Because if you have a large number of these,
I
those
agree.
crane
The,
guns,
the,
if you just have enough of them, you just shoot a Necrosphinx to death each turn, or you 5 unsaved wounds to a triple save Chaos Dragon a turn with like if you have 10 of these things all shooting it.
I agree. The thing that's
Super
standing
weird.
out to me is the problem is the crane gun.
Yeah,
It is too effective for the sheer volume that you could potentially get with this.
absolutely.
Yep.
So and if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh great, all I need to do is spend enough money and I can have the best army there is. This will be either
Dude,
nerfed or
yes.
FAQ'd or it will be comped. Do not buy 10 of these, please.
Please do not do that. This has happened time and time again in all GW games. Do not go and rush, and because these are expensive to buy,
Yeah,
and they're going to take a long time to hobby up, and think you're going to get 10 on the battlefield. You might for a handful of events, but I'm telling you, um, as Evan pointed out, it's going to get comped by communities, or GW is going to FAQ it, or it's going to get points adjusted. This will not continue in terms of this is going to just break the game. GW has shown that they will adjust the meta. They're going to update the game, and we've never seen more updates coming than what's supposed to happen for Old World in the coming months, and we've never seen a faster response time. So please, 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 they're awesome. Please only buy like 2 or 3 at
And
most, because changes will come.
if you only have 1 or 2, it's fine. If you're someone who's listening to this and you're thinking, oh no, I don't want to play things that are overpowered. I want to have casual fun games with my friend. If you take 1, you're fine.
It's fine.
You're fine.
Totally fine. Even 2 wouldn't bother me.
Yeah.
As soon as you start getting to 3 plus, it's going to start to get okay. Anyway, let's move on. We've talked about it enough.
It is one of the most complicated and weird units in the game, so it's interesting. But we have Cathay Sentinel, which is a bit more straightforward. We've got a monster. It's a behemoth. It's on a very large base. I love that. I really wish every behemoth was on the 100 by 150. For one thing, I love having the arc of sight being pretty big, but I also think it's a nice downside to have a big base for cannons and such.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. It's definitely a negative for sure.
So you have
balanced.
Honestly, this is not as tough as I thought it would be. It's toughness 6 with 6 wounds, and it just has heavy armor. I don't understand. I really thought this thing would be toughness 7 with 7 wounds. It's kind of weird how this is not that
I think it's tough enough for people in the old world to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean like when you compare it to the gigantic chaos spawn, I kind of feel like it could be tougher. But anyway, let's look at what it does do. You have 5 subtypes to pick from.
Love it. Super fun.
This is awesome. Like when you have like giants, and I think the closest thing I can think of is you have things like the Manticore, not the Manticore, the Chimera in Wars Chaos, and you have the like the Jabberslythe and the
or the giant chaos spawn.
Yeah, where they have lots of little upgrade options on the monster. I'm like, that's super cool. I think that's awesome.
We love that about Old World. Choice and customization in Old World is what makes this game stand. One of the reasons why this game stands out from what's out there right now. Yep,
but you get to pick. It starts at 230 points, which means, you could fit 2 easily in your rare slot if you've got, like a 2,000 point army. I really wish people played a lot of different points values. I think 2,000 points might not be super balanced, but anyway. We've got 5 options, right? So we have Close Order, Immune to Psychology, Implacable, which basically means you're not going to, at least once, you're going to only give ground or not move at all. You got Large Target, only D3 plus 1 stomps. So again, we don't necessarily have like the giant getting the D6 or anything.
It's happy to see that. The D6 stomps are very strong. So,
but again, remember, D3 plus 1 on average is better or almost as good as D6, right? So,
Yep.
Does have Terror, has Timber, which is your favorite rule, to have people fall on me.
Super fun.
Anyway, it's also unbreakable.
All right, cool. So let's see, what else does it do?
Well, we only have, interestingly, unlike a giant, we have 3 attacks.
Not a lot.
Weird. But let's look at, and we have different special types. We also have the Great Blade, which the actual model, the blade is like the size of, I don't know, like a crane that would like lift things up a skyscraper. It's massive.
Super cool.
And I think that the blade lives up to its size. So the Great Blade has either Scything Blow, which gives you strength 6, right? Strength user, AP 2, extra attacks 2d3 with Armor Bane. So this thing can spit out, anywhere
it's a sweep
from
attack.
Anywhere from 5 to 9 attacks, right?
Okay, love it. I love having 2 profiles and it can choose, right? Typically it's the AoE sweep attack or it's the single target hit as hard as you can. I love giving that choice. Again, it's an interesting choice for the player, and I love seeing that.
Yeah, it's like it's like swinging like a baseball bat into the ranks and you just wipe everything out, right?
Strike last though, so the first round probably fine, but you're getting into round 2 or 3, you have some wounds. You got to be careful about that.
I do think though, Mike, that you're only ever going to do this versus infantry and cavalry who aren't going to kill you anyway. So then you're just going to go, cool, that was nice, and then you just smack the crap out of them.
Sounds awesome.
Or you have Deadly Strike, where you have Strength plus 1,
deadly.
AP 4, Killing Blow, Monster Slayer, multi wounds D3. It has all 3 of the super awesome rules on its profile.
Oh, well, you only have 3 attacks though.
For now.
You only have 3 attacks. Okay.
You can take High Magic and give it Fury of Cain for a 4th attack.
Sure. Okay. But I'm just saying my opinion of it would be very different if you had, 6 attacks, 7 attacks. The fact that it's only 3,
Yeah, it has a decent weapon skill as well. So again, if any dragon wants to try to fight you, it at very least has to go, oh, Well, what if
Yeah,
they,
but my point
you
is,
know,
even that dragon, if that dragon's again down to a few wounds, now it's an interesting choice to have, and it's not a guarantee you're going to take this deadly strike. If that dragon or that monster's down to a couple wounds, I might want to take scything blow. Again, this is what we want: interesting choices for the player. That's what makes the game really fun.
I can't think of a better profile to kill dragons with than Strength 7, AP 4, Monster Slayer, and Multi Wounds D3.
Yeah, we just have to catch it first.
So very cool. It's kind of like the Necrosphinx, right? Where the Necrosphinx. Remember, people
Yeah,
love the
yeah.
Necrosphinx. It has one attack, Mike. One that has Monster Slayer.
Hmm.
Just one.
Yep.
And people talk
The
about
Necrosphinx,
all the time about how, oh my god, the Necrosphinx is going to show up. What if it slays me?
but if but it flies,
Yeah,
this doesn't
sure.
fly.
No, I know. And it is on a big base, so it's easy to hit with cannons.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
look, but again, it's only 230 points. Implacable gives it once per game when it's charged. It can not give ground. So again, if a dragon tries to charge you and then it wants to run away somewhere else next turn, you could just try to
Honestly, I think these base
lock it
rules.
in.
This is what I'd want to see out of
Yeah,
a drag or a giant or
yeah.
or a monster of this size. So far, this seems very reasonable and very effective for what its points are. Again, it's also only a 5-up armor save too. So, poison, other things, you hit it with a lot of right. It's 5-up means it, but that if you have any AP, it's not going to get an
I
armor save.
really wish
So
this thing said it was made to poison because it is made out of stone. So I don't understand what the poison's gonna do to
because they
this.
use acid poison, obviously the same thing they
No,
use
they
on the
don't.
steam tank.
They don't use acid
Yeah,
poison.
absolutely. They have the fleshy
Or
poison
right, yeah, the
and
steam tank's
the
not immune to it
green
either.
poison.
That's stupid.
Anyway, moving on.
If they
Okay,
gave
so here's some
out
upgrade.
ward save versus poison, Mike, as much as they gave it versus flaming attacks, we would have a very different meta.
We would, but we don't. So this is the free one, right? So if you don't give it any upgrades, it gets a 6-up regen. Cool.
Yeah,
Again, it's better than nothing, but 6-up, it's just not going to come into play uh, massively, but it could be clutch, right? It could be,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, so cool. I mean, it comes for free. Great, love
And
it.
you're
Awesome.
unbreakable, so there's no downside to those regens that you're rolling, right?
Yep. Okay, love. Very cool.
And
Yep.
remember,
So
there
that
is
helps.
there is a sig spell to give you 6-up ward as well, so you could potentially cast that on your Sentinel guy and have him have 3 saves. It's fine.
True, but I'd still rather have a 5-up than a 2 6-ups.
Right.
Uh,
What about a Jade Sentinel, Mike, who knows a single spell chosen by their
ooh,
controlling player before armies are
cool,
deployed from either
cool. I
battle
love
or
that.
elementalism, and it's cast as
Fun.
power level 3. So Jade Sentinels, Mike, are a giant that has the old Sisters of the Thorn ability, but is power level 3. It's better.
How many points?
That's 20 points more, so they're 250.
Okay. So yeah, you could do Pillar of Fires, a whole bunch of them with this.
What you
So
don't get
250
is
points.
reserve move to then cast Pillar of Fire and then walk away from people, which is what the
You
Sisters were
also are
doing.
only taking 2 of these on the battlefield. You're not fielding 5 of them.
Yeah. I
I
think
guess
that this
technically
is
3
still
if you took the general. So you could take at most you could have 3.
I think that a lot of people are maybe thinking about maybe doing just fireball with this dude because you're not
Mm-hmm.
getting out of range, but you're just sitting there and you say, "Hey, I know I'm kind of slow and I don't fly, but what if I just shoot you?"
Yeah, but to your point, he could also be caught a lot easier than the sisters. So as you just high five, tag in combat, cool, he's
Yeah.
not shooting anymore. So
The
there significantly, this is while there's similarities to that, this is way more balanced than they were.
picking your spell anyway, very interesting.
Moving on. Yep, cool. I love it.
I think that this one seems really really fun. You don't have any defense, so again, because you lose the regen, so
Mhm.
you often might pick this guy and go, oh no, they have cannons or something, and then great. Now the spell I have to pick is Oaken Shield, so I have some kind of defense. You just keep trying to cast the 5-up ward on yourself because
Yep,
you're really worried about getting hurt.
but you still have to cast it, and it still needs to not be dispelled.
Exactly. Whereas you could have just been free and had some kind of save. Um,
Hmm.
so we have Obsidian Sentinel. He
Okay,
gets magic resistance 2. Enemy wizards within
cool.
12 inches have to take a leadership test first, and if they fail that leadership test, they suffer a -3 to their modifier for casting. And
Okay.
if they pass, they
Uh,
suffer a -1.
I mean, that's really, really, really good, but you're also not super fast, and wizards typically don't want to be near things like this anyway. So
Yeah,
I think it's really, really cool. I think it's not an offensive thing, but it will allow you to zone potentially wizards out of areas. So again, if you got 2 of the one of them, not such a big deal. If you got 2 of these and you push them towards the center of the table, right, and you could zone out like a threat range. So I love that because you're having to use him to zone and his board control, and that's very, very interesting.
against a
And
lot of armies, the only thing they use against you is magic, so having MR2 can be better than a ward save if they're just trying to shoot Vile Tide or, magic missiles or some other kind of
Or you're
hex on
playing
you.
against another Cathay army who's
Yeah,
bringing all magic missiles, and you're like, great, I'll take my Obsidian Sentinels. Yep,
right?
very cool. Love
Decently.
it. Okay,
Granite Sentinel, also very, very
okay,
cool. This one improves its armor value by 1, so it has a 4+ armor save. And in addition,
okay.
it's immune to multi-wounds.
That's really good.
So
That's really good. But
in
it's also
particular,
defensive, so okay.
yeah, in particular, just not having multi-wounds suffered when you get hit by like Ushabti great bows or bolt throwers or cannons.
Cannons, cannons.
Because
Yeah.
remember, you only have the 6 wounds. So
Hmm.
if you're 6 wounds and you ignore all multi-wounds in total,
But how many
this
points is
guy.
this?
So let's see. I think it's like 40, 35. So you're going to be
35. So now you're
265.
getting 265. So now you're only getting one in your rare slot.
And yeah, but if you have a Shugengen general, you can stick them in special. So then you'll be with it.
You can stick one in special. I
Yeah.
thought.
So then you have one in special, one in
So you
rare,
could have
kind of
two.
bounce down.
So I'm just saying, like, they're already you can't field 3 now. So and it's
Definitely.
getting pricey. It's getting pricey.
Then we have the Warpstone Sentinel. He gets magical attacks, and while in base contact, units suffer -1 to their toughness.
Love it. Got some Skaven going on there.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. That has a lot of fun potential combos. I love that because it's comboing with other units. That's really, really cool.
I think the best thing you can imagine here is, oh, I got my Warpstone Sentinel into the enemy Chaos Lord on Dragon. He's lowering their toughness by 1, and then I'm going to charge my Spectral Doppelganger Shugengen in there, and he's got a better shot at doing some damage, right? I feel like that's a cool scenario that's going to be really hard to pull off, but it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I think the Sentinels are really cool. I didn't see anything there that felt broken. You're definitely paying your points for what you're getting. I love it. I wish the Giants were just like this. I think this is a really cool, interesting unit. I think you're
Yeah,
going to see a lot of them.
yeah, I think that this is not necessarily as breaking as like, for example, taking a very large number of balloons, but it's just a
No,
really nice feeling monster. And worst case
yeah,
scenario, you just don't do that much damage to somebody, but guess what? You're unbreakable. So you're like, all right, cool, I'll just sit
mhm,
there, right?
yeah. It feels like a good in points investment. I love it. I love the Sentinel. It's
I,
great.
I also really
Great.
enjoy anything that makes the Overblade worse, and the Granite Sentinel does. So keep at it, King. You got that, man.
All right, we almost done. We got a couple more things. We got some
Yeah,
guns, right?
yeah. We have 2 artillery pieces. We've got the Grand Cannon, which is
Okay.
it's a regular old cannon. It is on a large base. That's interesting. 60 by 100.
That does matter quite a bit. It makes you a lot more vulnerable to things.
So it's a 48-inch range cannon, which is a little bit shorter, but it is strength 10 AP3 with armor bane 3. Now it has more armor bane than it could possibly need because AP6 doesn't do anything. So that's
Yeah,
interesting.
it doesn't.
It fires as a cannon, which is cumbersome mover suit. That's pretty standard, and it has multi wounds D3+1. So it's a great cannon with a little bit less range, right?
Okay.
However,
Okay.
it
That all
does
seems
have
fine so far.
yeah,
Okay.
it has Thunderous Impact. Thunderous Impact. Until the start of your next turn phase, any unit, friend or foe, that's within 2d6 of the strike point, so that's after the overshot roll, suffers
So where it
-1 to
ultimately,
movement and can't use Swift Stride. So you can
I love
really
that.
you can shoot, like, maybe you don't even fire at the enemy artillery cannons or
Yeah.
stuff like that, but you can just turn off their Swift Stride so that they have a less charge range
You're
threat.
not even trying. You're not even trying to hit them. You're just like, I'm going to use this to shut off your swift stride or movement. That is so cool. I love that. Now,
And
again, you
Chaos
are
Dwarfs
still
have
firing into the
this.
cannon, though. You're not firing indirect, so you're still having to have a direct line of sight to this thing. But the idea that I'm choosing, do I really want to do damage versus I really want to make sure that dragon again or that cavalry unit doesn't get a swift stride. That's exciting. I love that. Of course, you can still blow yourself up, but wow, that is a really exciting mechanic to put on a cannon.
And this costs 5 more points than an Empire cannon.
Hmm. And the newer model is cooler. Yeah.
So I just
Okay.
think, Mike, we're very soon.
Let's wait. Let's wait till Empire. Empire love's coming for Empire. I'm telling you, love is coming for Empire, Evan. I don't know when. Hopefully, very very soon. But they're going to get some love. They will. They
Yeah,
will get some love.
it's either that or I'm gonna be lobbying you about points. Anyway,
They're gonna be love's coming for Empire. I'm telling you, it's on its way.
this
I
is
don't know
this is
when.
cool.
It's not going to happen.
This is great, and
I
this
I
massive
I think
cannon.
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Again,
So
choice, interesting choice during your turn. You have a really interesting choice every time you fire it. That I think is awesome for really, really fun game.
we have the Fire Rain rocket battery, which is also 130 points. So only a few, like, is it 5 points more than a Hellstorm rocket battery? It's just
hmm
better than Hellstorm rocket battery. It has indirect fire. It has two rocket types. It's got the Bastion
Okay.
rockets with his strength 4 and then it's 5 under the hull and AP 1. And this one is a small blast template that then has a multi wounds D6 in the center. Very
Okay.
rare to
So
get
for
multi
one
wounds
thing,
D6.
very rare, incredibly rare in the game.
It's
But
only strength 5 AP
um,
3, but like if you shoot at a light monster and you get the direct hit,
mhm.
D6 wounds is a lot.
It could pop a monster. It could pop a scorpion or something else. Yeah.
Yeah,
The medium monsters, it could, yep,
yeah.
ruin their day. Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Or the other rocket battery is strength 3 AP 1 under the hull, but it's large blast.
hmm
And strength 4 AP 1 under the center. So nothing super special in the center. But again, that's kind of just better than like an Empire mortar or better
hmm
than the Hellstorm rocket battery. And like I'm very jealous.
It's it's what those other war machines should be doing. So hopefully we're going to see them updated to be something much closer to this.
Oh, also in the second case, in the large blast, which I like more by the way, the large blast one, because you could just kill all kinds of goblins and skeletons. They have to take a if you suffer one or more wounds, you have to take a panic test.
Okay.
So you can
That's
start
fun.
triggering some panics on people. It's pretty useful.
Yeah, I love it. It's exciting. Definitely see both of these war machines being used a lot on the battlefield, and they look really cool and they're interesting choice. Both of them have an interesting choice every time they fire. Awesome.
Yeah, and
Just
as long as you have a
it's
balloon,
great design.
this thing can just hide behind a hill somewhere where you can't even see it, and it could just be firing with whatever the balloon could see.
Yeah, and again, it still scatters. It's just having the balloon is
Yeah,
not having the worst scatter.
and then you don't have to have your rocket batteries like exposed to enemy, cannon fire
Yep.
or charges because they could just be like behind a hill or
Yep.
behind a forest. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Super cool.
But here's the real spice, Mike. For 35 points, you can add an ogre to your crew, who's toughness
Uh,
4 with 3 wounds and 3
okay.
attacks. So if anyone tries to like charge you, you have like decent amount of just meat to fight them with.
I mean, better than typical War Machine crew for sure. Yeah, but
Yeah, this is the
that's a
best
lot of
ogre model in
points.
the game, including Ogre Kingdoms.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right.
So first of all,
Cool.
he can buy gunpowder bombs for his entire crew for 8 points. So now you have like 4 guys that can all throw grenades at anyone who charges the crew. So like if you have some like light cav or some skirmishers who are going to try to charge this crew, they're all like, "Oh look, let's throw some grenades."
Yeah, but now you're at 43 points for that. So,
Sure.
but to your point, it's definitely a deterrent for those 5-man light cavalry units or 5-man skirmishing units. Right? They could get a few good rolls and you're in trouble. hmm
Yeah. And then mercenary crew is a rule that I believe was exposed during one of the articles earlier on this year.
hmm
He's a special character.
Okay.
Now, this is a horrible word to use here because is he a character as in he can like challenge? Like I don't know.
Mm, Let's move on.
It says
Deal with that
character
later.
can join the unit, whatever. And then you can't leave the war machine. Okay, I don't know. Like if the war machine gets shot to death, does he get removed? I don't know. Then so there's some questions to answer there. Secondly, the crew of the war machine with an overloader gets +1 to its movement, so it can move a little bit further. That's cool. And it has the stubborn rule. So if you like, it's kind of like a dwarf crew now. So if you like lose combat, you have stubborn. That's amazing. But here's the real reason why you buy him. Once per game, you can either with the rocket battery or the grand cannon, you can fire twice. Or you get to
hmm
reroll your artillery dice. You get to do either thing. So if you buy
One
two
per game.
grand cannons with ogre loaders, you can either have a turn where you fire 4 times, or if you ever roll a misfire on the first 2 shots, you can just use the reroll instead.
So what does an engineer cost?
45 points.
This is 35 points. You can do it once. An engineer, you can do it every turn.
That's true.
This seems totally balanced.
I disagree.
Why?
Because of all the other things you get to
The
do.
Empire. Uh,
You
you have to
Mike, you
pay for
might
those other
disagree with
things.
me, or you might be more on my side when you experience 12 cannonballs in a single turn.
Why am I being hit by 12 cannonballs in this?
Because you can buy 6 cannons with ogre loaders and they can just fire twice all of them.
Again, you're assuming you're playing in a comp that doesn't have rule of 3,
So
which
the latest
almost
match play
all
pack,
communities out there do.
and well, this will be a really interesting follow-up video. The latest match play pack says, "Hey, great, units of that are special. You should follow rule of 3, unless, Mike, unless they are limited any other way, which these are." So then what?
Yeah, well, I don't know. We're going to see what the
Yeah,
community votes because always certainly with our community, it's what is our community who are showing up to our events. how do they want to play, right? It's not about how we want to play. It's we do community surveys and votes and have the
Yeah,
community figure out what they want to do. But generally speaking, our community, at least, has for the most part voiced they want as little rules tinkering with as possible. So we have a very light touch approach. So likely they will want more of this, and certainly not saying that this is wrong or anything, but you keep we keep bringing up the skew examples, and
sure.
skew
Yeah, yeah,
lists
that's
in
true.
all versions of workshop games are incredibly powerful versus X percentage of the enemies. And then there's always the Y enemy that hard counters them. And that's been true across whether it's old world, whether it's 40K, whether it's Age of Sigmar. So are you saying yes? Are there versions where skew lists are going to be incredibly powerful and feel super not fun? Yes, they are. And then they're going to run into their counter lists and they're going to get steamrolled. So I that is my prediction because we've seen this time and time again with game system after game system, army after army. So yes, skew versions versus some things will be crazy, but some things they will, I think, just fold to instantly
Yeah, that's true. We'll definitely have to wait and see. I do think that firing twice in the same turn might be a little bit insane.
until you
But
just
we'll see.
misfire and blow yourself up and it doesn't
That's
matter.
true. Yeah, I mean you have less reliability. I mean I really like my reliability with my Empire engineer who's just sitting there being like, please nobody screw up. It's nice. And you know what? Every cannon in the game that doesn't have some kind of engineer, like for example the Board Princess Bombards, yeah, they blow themselves up a lot. You know,
All
Iron
the every
Blasters,
all the
Ogres,
time.
they blow themselves up a lot.
All right, but anyway, so we're just speculating. Let's
Yeah.
move on to standards though. Let's wrap this up.
All right, so we have four standard options. Standard Wage In, so they get to cause fear, and any unit within 12 gets -1 of their leadership test when they make a fear, panic, or terror. I don't care about that.
Yep. Doesn't seem like I'm going to spend 40 points on that, does it?
Yeah, it's the same movie, like, yeah, whatever. And then we have Icon of Heavenly Fury. So single use, they activate during command phase. Until your next starter turn sub phase, enemy units can't use Fly X. So it's like the
Ooh.
Falconhorn or the Banner of the Warped Moon, but it's just single use only.
But
But
it's
it
single use
automatically works.
only. Well, honestly, I would greatly prefer they update the Falcon Horn to single use only. Um, so we'll see if we get any FAQs with that. So super, super, super powerful. Single use only makes it a lot more because stomach it a lot more.
Yeah. Then we have
But
Dragon's Eye
this is where
Banner.
we said earlier, right? Those characters, those heroes, or the character champions that aren't restricted to 25 points, or this is Magic Standard. So
Yeah, yeah, it would just
yeah, you
be
don't care if you want.
any Jade Warrior unit can bring this, right?
Can they take standards over 25 points?
Yeah, 50.
Okay, so any unit can take it. Okay,
There aren't very many
okay.
units in the entire game that only have 25 point limit on standards. I don't even know why that would be even
It's usually
different.
50 for standards. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
All
Dragon
right.
Eye Banner, when an enemy wizard chooses a unit carrying the Dragon Eye Banner as the target on a 3+, they have to choose another target. This is a banner that ogres have that's really, really good that I think costs more than 30 points. I think it's like 45
That is a,
points.
that is a very good banner. Yes.
It's an incredibly useful banner. If you take a unit of 30 something Jade Warriors in a big brick, put this on them,
Hmm.
no brainer.
Yeah. This is what you want in that anvil unit in the center of the table. It's a great banner to put on them.
Okay, and then there's finally we have a Banner of the Bastion, which for 25 points the unit gets Shield Wall, which you
Oh,
can
okay.
use with the cavalry, even though you have to be using you have to be using a shield. So I guess yeah, so you can give your cavalry units Shield Wall if you want. It's only
Okay.
25
I
points.
probably won't.
Yeah,
Cool.
I think
Well,
the
the
Dragon
Dragon
Eye
Knight
Banner
banner
and the
is
Icon of Heavenly
really,
Fury are just no brainers. So if you take 2 units
yeah,
in core, 1 unit of infantry, 1 unit of cavalry, put one of
we're
these
going
on
to
one
see
and
those
one
a
on the other.
lot. We're going to see those a lot. Yeah. Cool. Did we do it? Did we get to the end?
That's it. That's all we got.
We
Now, you
did
know
it.
what? If you
Awesome.
see from the time code of these videos, you can see we only have like 10 kits or whatever for Cathay. There's a lot that's going on here, right?
I love this. I hope this is the standard we're going to see going forward for new releases in the old world. It's really exciting. It's really thematic. It's flavorful. Don't get me wrong. It is a strong list. I'm excited to see this on the tabletop. I'm curious what are the combos we haven't thought of yet because we're just really talking about what are the combos right that are coming off the top of our heads. So,
Yes.
but in particular, the thing I love about a lot of the choices is that there's interesting choices for the player in this list all the time. Do I transform? Do I not transform? Do I want to shoot my cannon to do damage? Do I want to slow you down? Do I want to go melee with this? Or there's a lot of just interesting choices you're constantly making with your units all the time with this armor, and I think that's really, really exciting.
It is. It absolutely is super exciting. I think that the majority of Cathay players are going to buy one of each thing, put it in an
Mhm.
army list, and just see what happens. And maybe we'll go through a 6 month period where people are mostly just painting and building the one kit of each thing they bought, and that'll be
Mhm.
perfectly fine. I think that all of the problems that I had with some of the balance years is only when you abuse and take certain like spams of certain things. That's it.
Yeah, hard skews, and so I think if GW doesn't address the hard skews, we know historically the community will address the hard skews if they end up being as game breaking as they potentially could be. But we're going to learn real quick. This is, oh my goodness, this is such a popular army. We're going to see so many of them out there, and we're going to learn real quick. And again, we might fight. It could even be, hey, this hard skew is amazing, except when I run into other Cathay, and I run into other Cathay at every event I'm going to because it's so popular, and suddenly the other
That's
Cathay
true.
skew or balanced list just spanks my list. So we're gonna find out, right?
Yes, we will.
All right, Evan, any closing words, sir?
Stay legendary.
All right, we'll see you all next time.